Hi guys, today we are going to discuss further more about the Harlem Renaissance during the 1920s. And before we start, I want you guys to pause the video and think about these questions on your own. And so they say, what does equality mean to you? And what does the American dream mean to you? So pause the video and think to yourself what equality and the American dream means to you personally. And so today we are going to read a poem called I Too by Langston Hughes. And Langston Hughes is an extremely famous, really well-known African-American poet from the 1920s Harlem Renaissance. And he was basically a huge activist, and he really supported, racial equality. He wanted segregation to end, and he was an activist for the African-American community and expressing through poetry and art what African Americans were going through and kind of like the struggles, the hard times of segregation, and it kind of helped them feel like not so lonely that they can read, like I feel that same way too, and just kind of relate to the African American community and kind of be a voice for them and for them to be heard. And so we're going to analyze this poem and go through each line, line by line, and figure out what the deeper meaning is. And while we do that, I want you guys to remember that we're analyzing a piece of art. And so art can be, a poem, it could be a book, it could be music, it could be a song, a rap song, a quote, an actual picture of art. I have back here some album covers, and those are pictures, or those are pieces of art that a artist was trying to send a message through their creativity. And the way you interpret and analyze and observe as the audience might be different than what I interpret. So you might think something different about the meaning of this poster or this album cover than I do, which is okay. There's nothing wrong with having different opinions, and it's all basically up to what you are interpreting and making that personal connection with. So there's no wrong answer throughout this video when I ask you questions. It's basically what you think. And I'm going to kind of explain, what his meaning behind the poem was. And if you guys don't feel like you 100% agree with that, what he's trying to say, and you're interpreting something different, that's totally okay. Because again, you're the audience and you are observing the art in your eyes and through your personal connection. So just remember that there's no wrong answers. And so I'm going to read the poem to you guys once. And it says, I too sing American. I am the darker brother. They send me to eat in the kitchen when company comes. But I laugh and eat well and grow strong. Tomorrow I'll be at the table when company comes. And nobody will dare say to me, eat in the kitchen then. Besides, they'll see how beautiful I am and be ashamed. I too am American. So now on your own, pause the video and think to yourself what the words of this poem might mean. What do you think the deeper meaning of this poem is? And remember, there's no wrong answer. It's all up to your interpretation. And so now we're going to go through each line by line and kind of figure out the deeper meaning. And so our first line says, I too sing American. So I want you guys to think, what does this line mean, and what is Langston trying to say that, and what he means by saying I sing American? What do you think he means by that? So pause the video and think about this on your own. And so Langston is trying to say that it means not only whites are American, but African Americans are also equally citizens in the United States, and that they should be treated equally and be considered an American. So then our next line says, I am the darker brother. So here he's literally saying, I am African American. He's saying, I'm the darker brother, I am black. He's literally saying that in this line. But I want you guys to think, what is the deeper meaning behind saying, I'm black and that I'm African American? And think back to the first line that we just discussed too, and how it kind of connects. So Langston here is trying to say that he is African American, yes, but he is equally American as someone that's white. And so the first line and the second line, I too sing American and I am the darker brother, kind of correlate together, and trying to the second line's reinforcing that, like, yes, like I am black, but I'm equally American just as a white person is, and that I deserve to be treated equal. So now we're going to go through lines 3 through 7, and they say, they send me to eat in the kitchen when company comes, but I laugh and eat well and grow strong. So now I want you guys to think about who's sending him to the kitchen and why. And I also want you to think about the last 3 lines, but I laugh and eat well and grow strong. Do you think he's literally eating like fruits and veggies and trying to get strong from food, from nutrition, or is there a deeper meaning behind that? So pause the video and think about that on your own. So here, Langston Hughes is basically talking about a domestic worker. And a domestic worker is someone who's employed by a household and basically is paid to do like all the household chores, cook, clean, all of that. And it's kind of like a servant. And you can also think about like a butler, but and here it's referring to someone that's not white. And servant's kind of like a harsher term to use than a butler. But he's referring to here and that there is a domestic worker and he's being sent to the kitchen by a white family. That's who's sending him to the kitchen. And this is explaining segregation, that basically African Americans could not eat at the same table as a white person, and segregation means that African Americans and whites were separated basically, and that they were not equal, and that African Americans couldn't even eat sometimes at the same restaurant. They couldn't use the same public restrooms as a white person. They couldn't use the same entrance or exit, or even use the same water fountain as a white person. And so it's explaining like there is segregation going on, and at the bottom, but I laugh and eat well and grow strong, is referring to, you know, yeah, I know there's segregation going on, but I'm going to, you know, keep working on myself and getting through this and going through segregation. Because of it, I will become stronger and I will get through it. And these lines are just stating segregation's happening, but I'm going to continue to grow strong and become powerful and overcome this. And so those are basically what Langston is trying to say with those lines. And then our next lines, 8 through 14, it says, tomorrow I'll be at the table when company comes, and nobody will dare say to me, eat in the kitchen. So I want you guys to think about what tomorrow means. Do you think he's literally saying tomorrow, the very next day, segregation is going to be over? Or is there a deeper meaning behind the word tomorrow? And then I want you guys to think about, why do you think he says nobody will dare say to me, eat in the kitchen? How is that correlating with, you know, tomorrow and segregation? Think about that on your own. So tomorrow refers to the future. It does not mean the very next day segregation is going to be over. It means in the future, segregation will pass and the African Americans will overcome it. And basically, the white community is going to see African Americans as equal. And it'll become normal that an African American can, you know, sit at the same table as someone that's white. They can eat at the same restaurant. They can use the same public restroom. They can use the same water fountain. And it'll become normal that African Americans and white people are going to function in society together equally, and that there's never going to be a separation. And they won't dare say to you anymore, to an African American, that like, hey, you can't sit there, or you can't, you know, use that water fountain or use that public restroom. So it's basically foreshadowing into the future that segregation is going to end and it's going to be normal and we're all going to be treated equally. And so our next lines, 15 through 17, it says, besides, they'll see how beautiful I am and be ashamed. And I want you guys to think about this to yourself. Do you think Langston is referring to himself or the African American community as a whole? Because it does say, they'll see how beautiful I am. So think about, is it about him or is it as a whole, the African American community? And I also want you guys to think about the starter question that I asked about equality. Do you think Langston is referring to equality here? So think about that on your own. So basically this is stating, Langston Hughes is stating that African Americans aren't bad and they are good. And they should be treated equally like white people because they're just as beautiful. And once African Americans are recognized as equal, everyone will see that they aren't bad and that they are good people and that they should be treated just as equally, and they shouldn't be, separated from the whites. And eventually American society of the white community will see that they are beautiful. And you can also think about this with different races, like the different hardships that Mexican Americans go through, Asian Americans go through, Indian Americans, like they're definitely have gone through a lot of different racial segregation and hardships. And so he's trying to really say that like everyone should be treated equal and everyone is equally as beautiful, not just white people are, and that white people shouldn't just be like considered superior and higher power, but African Americans deserve to feel beautiful and looked at equally and be recognized that they are just the same, and that there should be equality. So our last line, line 18, says, I too am American. So earlier in the starter question, I asked what the American dream means to you. And so what do you think Langston's American dream is for African Americans? And what do you think the deeper meaning behind him saying, I am American, in this line here? So think about this to yourself. So he's stating here again that he is African American, but he's also 100% still American, and he should be treated equally and should be looked and recognized as a human, and not just separated and having segregation, and that all races are American even if they're not white. And so that's kind of the deeper meaning behind this line too. And so as a whole with this poem, Langston's trying to get the point across that yes, there's segregation, and yes, African Americans are being treated like crap, and they're not treated equal, but the African Americans, the community of African Americans are going to get through it, and they're going to come out stronger, bigger, and better. And then eventually, segregation is going to be over, and white people are going to recognize, that African Americans should be treated equally, and they're not going to ever once say again like, oh, you can't do this because of their skin color. And so this poem is really deep and meaningful for the African American community at this time, because a lot of people felt the way Langston is expressing what it was like to be an African American at this time. And so again, with you guys, when we went through this poem, if you guys thought anything different, that's okay. There's no wrong answer. I was just trying to give you guys what Langston was trying to get the point across, and I hope you guys could connect with this and kind of understand the deeper meaning behind the words of the poem. And on your own, on Google Classroom, I want you guys to complete an assignment, and I basically want you guys to find or think about a time where you felt alone, or you felt isolated, or you felt like you didn't have anyone, or went through some hard time, like a struggle, a hardship. And I want you guys to think about a piece of art. So again, this could be a poem, could be a book, it could be a quote, it could be a song, a rap song, it could be a picture. And this needs to be school appropriate, so no cuss words, no inappropriate pictures. And think about how basically that piece of artwork helped you get through that hard time. How did you relate to it? And that piece of art made you feel something. And so I want you guys to find an artwork. Think about that struggling time. Think about what the meaning of that piece of art is, and how it relates to you, and what your deeper connection and meaning behind that artwork is for you. And I hope you guys can have fun with that. Get a little creative. And again, no right or wrong answers. It's just how you interpret your artwork.